Hey guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man. Once again, and today we're going to be doing another manga review. We're going to be looking at Spy Family arcs 4 and 5, which are contained in the last chapter of book 2, and the rest of the arcs are contained here in volume 3. Now, I've already done the book facts for this story, so I'm going to skip that this time. If you're interested in knowing all of the details, feel free to watch the first few minutes of my previous video that deals with Spy Family. So, yeah, the premise here is basically that Lloyd and Yor's relationship, fake relationship, faces its first difficulty here, which in this case is family drama because Yor forgot to tell Yuri that she was dating someone / married to someone, right? And so that's a difficult thing to deal with. And beyond that, it's also time to move the mission forward in some way because they haven't really been able to accomplish much besides get their foot in the door. So that's the premise there. So moving on to the plot line here, arc 4 is called the Secret Police arc. It's chapters 11 through 14, so I think that's 5 chapters, 11, 12, 13, 14. No, that's 4 chapters, sorry, can't count. And basically it starts with Anya at school. It transitions over to introduce the secret police, the secret service something. I can't remember. It's a SSS. It's a triple S acronym, but I can't remember what it is. But they're basically the secret police. And it introduces them by having them raid Yor's office, which is kind of interesting. And then it introduces Yuri by having him show up while they're interrogating this guy that they got out of Yor's office, right? So, yeah, Yuri's interrogating this guy, and he's really interesting because he comes off as a very affable guy, very nice person, and then suddenly he kind of shifts, right? He changes, and this change actually leads to him being a pretty intimidating guy, and he basically tortures this person for information. This person doesn't really end up having done anything, but, well, it's kind of interesting, right? And then panic at home ensues thanks to the fact that Yor forgot to tell Yuri that she was married. They backdated her marriage a year, so she's been married for a year without telling her brother, and so this is a big problem, right? Of course. And so, yeah. Then, basically, Yor and Lloyd talk about it, and he has a bunch of plans, a bunch of ideas. And she's like, don't worry, I got a plan, it's gonna work. And when Yuri comes over, they talk, they start, you know, chatting with each other. And then Yor starts her plan, which is literally just telling her brother that she forgot. And because Yor and Yuri are weirdos, it works. And so it makes sense, and they deal with the consequences of that. And it's pretty funny. I like how that interaction there happened. It's really ridiculous. It's really, really enjoyable, right? So, yeah. Yuri's interrogation of Lloyd continues, and he continues to talk, and Lloyd actually picks up on the fact that Yuri is actually using pre-made lines from the Secret Police handbook, from the Secret Police manual, and he recognizes this because it's something that he has to learn, right, in case he ever interacts with someone like that. And so he figures out who Yuri is, but he doesn't know if Yor knows. So we get a little bit of Yor background here with the fact that she started killing people young in order to provide for her little brother, who was a very voracious reader, someone that was really interested in being a good student. And Yor wasn't that good at it, but she really cared about her brother, and so she had to do what she had to do in order to provide for him. And so this also leads to the fact that Yuri's actually really basically in love with his sister in the kind of Japanese, you know, siscon kind of way, which is weird, but also whatever. It's kind of funny in the situation that it works here. So they finish their conversation. It all kind of goes well, but Yuri is still, of course, cautious of Lloyd, and Lloyd, of course, is now curious about Yor's allegiances, and so he actually bugs her. He puts kind of a listening device on her. And he does this to get a bit more info out of Yor. But then when it turns out that she hasn't really done anything, she doesn't know anything about Yuri's job, he feels really guilty about it because he is basically breaking her trust. And so this is a lot of big development for the family here. Moving on, the fifth arc is called the Stella Acquirement arc or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it has to do with the fact that they finally get a gold star for Anya, right? And so it opens up in PE class where apparently the kids are able to gain Stellas via amazing feats of sportsmanship, or not necessarily sportsmanship in the moral sense, but in the physical sense. And so they're all trying to do well in this game of dodgeball, and it gets pretty serious and it's pretty funny and really insane. There's this like 6-year-old kid that looks like a 40-year-old man, which is hilarious. There's this awesome moment where Damien sacrifices himself for Anya, and then Anya tries to show off and be badass, and then she completely falls on her face, and it was really, really funny. I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, basically there is actually no chance of getting a Stella from first grade activities, or from whatever grade they're in activities, because they're pretty childish in nature. There's nothing valuable to them, right? So they have to find a different way of getting Stellas, right? And so yeah, Lloyd decides to see if he can get Anya to get a Stella out of a different thing by providing her opportunities to volunteer and help her community. And they try to do a bunch of things, and none of them work because Anya is kind of a klutz, and also she's not really sure about how to do the things that she's doing. And so there's a series of failures. And then finally, I think it's at a hospital, where a kid is dealing with a bum leg, and he has to go to physical therapy to get better. And his physical therapy happens in the pool. And Anya hears him, and she kind of locks into his thoughts for a moment. And while she's locked into his thoughts, he falls into the pool. Anya realizes that there's no one around that is aware of this, and tries to go help him. She tells Lloyd she wants to go swimming as a way to kind of discreetly tell him what to do, but it doesn't work, so she just runs off to the pool. She jumps in, although she's not really good at swimming, especially not in her little dress, and so she also ends up kind of sinking, but Lloyd steps in to save both of them. And so Anya has saved someone using her powers. She has been praised for it by Lloyd and by Yor, and so she's very happy with her situation. She has grown to appreciate her powers instead of think of them as kind of this kind of not great thing, right? Because even though it's never actually stated, it is definitely heavily implied that she's not happy with the fact that she has powers because of like the way that it ends up getting her treated, right? Especially by the scientist early on, and then by the fact that she basically comes off as a weird kid, and it's not that great, right? So yeah, and so she gets her first star, and so she goes back to school. She shows off her star, and things happen here that kind of do things for the characters, but aren't really all that important. So I'm gonna skip over them. And then we get the discussion of the fact that Anya has done something admirable, and so she deserves a reward. At least that's like the perspective that the children have. And so she talks about it, and she's like, I want a dog. And so that sets up the next arc, right? And we also have the situation here that happens where there's 2 little extra chapters that have been released that are part of the 2 volumes that I mentioned that are not exactly tied to these stories, but in the anime, for the sake of connecting them, were included into these arcs that I mentioned here. So these extra missions are canonically, in terms of the anime, part of the story, but in terms of the manga, they're actually outside of the continuity. And so when you read them, you can enjoy them with no regard for where they fit in. But you can easily make them fit into any of the parts that you've read so far. So feel free to deal with them. One of them is about Anya, I think, and the other one is about a date that Yor and Lloyd have. So there you go. Do with that what you will. I think the first one actually is with Anya wanting to go to the zoo, or something happens and they go to the aquarium actually, and it's pretty funny. I quite like it. And the other one is, of course, that date that I mentioned. So let's see the plot line. In terms of characters here, we have Lloyd, Anya, and Yor. Frankie, of course. Yuri, who gets introduced, and that's basically the only important characters that happen here. In terms of Lloyd, we get a lot of character development in terms of him realizing that he kind of cares for the two people that are in his life now, Anya and Yor. For Yor, we get a little bit of background for her. For Anya, we get development and we get her learning to enjoy using her power, or to see the value of her power. Frankie doesn't do anything except in the extras, in the extra missions, so he's not that important. And Yor's a pretty interesting character. His Siscon thing is weird, but also kind of funny. And the conflict that is setting up between him and Lloyd is going to be pretty interesting to see where it goes. In terms of world building, we get introduced to the secret police, and that's basically all there is to it. There really isn't too much going on. They're basically your standard kind of like secret agent group that is in charge of maintaining kind of order in the world that they live in. And it's pretty standard fare for things like Man from U.N.C.L.E., Mission Impossible, James Bond, and stuff like that. So if you are aware of one group of secret police, you're aware of all of them, so it makes sense. Yeah, in terms of artwork and fan service, the artwork is amazing. The dynamic of the artwork is really, really great. It's very alive feeling. And there's a lot of good comedy moments in the artwork itself. So I really enjoyed that, but there is no fan service aspect here at all, unless you count Yor showing off different outfits as fan service, although I don't think so. You'd have to be like a 10-year-old that doesn't know anything in order for that to appeal, or to appeal in that way, so I don't know. Ratings-wise, it's a 5 out of 5. It's so funny, and I think I'm liking this part of the story a lot more than the previous ones, mostly because this is just a relatively new content, but also because we're finally getting somewhere with the story in terms of the family developing into a unit, and also kind of moving forward the story. So overall, very, very good stuff. I'm very happy having read this. I recommend you guys do as well. So yeah, that's it for Spy Family. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys later.